Good morning. I invite you to rise as you are able and join me in the call to worship. When relationships end through no fault of our own, when medical tests produce results we did not want, when the world around us seems to be unraveling before our eyes, God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. When those closest to us need what we have to offer, when injustice is not somewhere at a distance, but in the house next door, when meeting the needs of the world is within our reach, grant us the courage to change the things we can. When we are tempted to obsess about the impossible, when we are worn out from trying to do what cannot be done, when we are missing the possibilities right in front of us, God, grant us the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. As God gathers us in, let us turn to hymn number 2236. Let's join together, in the responsive psalm. I will bless the Lord at all times. God's praise shall continually be in my mouth.
My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the ear hear and be glad.
Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt God's name together.
I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears.
Look to God and be radiant, so your faces shall never be ashamed.
The poor cried out, and the Lord heard, and saved them out of all their troubles.
The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear God and delivers them.
Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Please be seated.
This is the time that for all children can come forward and have a little talk. Here he comes. Hello, you're going wrong way. This way. Oh, nice. Hi, Layla. Sit here, sit here. Hello, we have a new friend. What's your name? Linda. Hey, Linda is our new friend. Should we welcome Linda? We'll say, hi, Linda. Hi, Linda. And you want to know all their names? I'll let you know later, right? Hi, Saffron. I don't even know all their names. Or, yes, how are you?
Good.
Are you preparing something for this week? Something that's going to happen this weekend? Are you preparing a basket that's shaped like a pumpkin that you can put something
My
sweet?
family already carved a very scary pumpkin with chicken pox and a nose that goes like this.
Oh, really? I hope it's not a zombie. I remember you talking about
And it
rule.
also goes like this.
Oh, really? Okay. What are you going to do on Halloween? Are you going to collect some candies? Huh? Trick or treats? All right. Anybody has a costume? Okay. Do you have a costume already prepared?
No, I'm gonna Hero.
Okay. What's your favorite costume, Halloween costume?
Mine
Mm-hmm.
is Luke Skywalker.
Luke the Skywalker. Okay. Here's go Luke the Skywalker. Anyone else? Yes. You like to be girl cowboy. Cowgirl. Okay. Anyone else? What's your favorite costume?
Cowgirls have red hats. I don't really have.
You don't have a favorite? What were you before? What costume did you wear before? Huh? Oh, we have Supergirl too. We have Superman. Superman. So let me show you this. I printed this. These are some of the costumes.
Spider.
Yeah. Who's this? Policeman. Sunflower. Clown.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is.
Princess.
Princess. Okay, that's a very... All right, so those are some of it. If you see, there is a pharaoh, there's a bees,
There's
there's
a
a
cat girl.
cat girl, there's a Batman.
There's a cowboy.
Right, I wonder where there is no pastor costume for Halloween. I feel a little hurt. All right, yes, yeah.
Well, I got cat costume.
You got cat costume, all right.
And it's pink.
And it's a pink cat, not just a cat, it's a pink cat. All right, great. So on Halloween, people are wearing costumes and going trick-or-treat and having fun. And when you wear a costume, you wear a costume to look like what? To look like what costume look like, right? If it is a cowgirl, you want to be as best as you look like a Luke Skywalker. And you want to be as best cowgirl as you can be look like. You can be princess as possible as you can look like a princess or cat woman, whatever that is. That's what the costume is for, right? Costume is to make you look like most about that person, right? Whether it's a policeman, Luke Skywalker, cowgirl, right? So what about we all put a costume this Halloween that look like Jesus? Huh? What kind of costume do you think we should wear that would look like Jesus or that would make us look like Jesus? Yes?
Take all their clothes off except their underwear.
He must have seen Jesus on the cross. Anyone else? What would be the best costume? Should we have like a Luke Skywalker little gadget? No, right? Would be Jesus would have a head like a cowgirl?
Gadget. gadget. It's a lightsaber.
Okay,
One hit
I'm
on
sorry.
You, with it, you die.
Okay, I'm sorry. Lightsaber. Jesus didn't have a lightsaber, right? Look, Jesus didn't have a special costume. You cannot wear something to be like Jesus. You can only act like Jesus, right? So you don't need to have a special costume to go out and tell people, hey, look, I look like Jesus because I love Jesus. No, you don't need to wear special things to be like Jesus. But you can act like Jesus. What would be like that you can do that would tell people, oh, Layla must love Jesus. Layla is like Jesus. What kind of action that you can do that make people think that, oh, they are all Jesus lovers. They all follow Jesus.
Giggling.
Giggling, right? Joy, having joy. How about loving others? How about especially praying for people who are in difficult times? How about talking to the friend who needs help, right? So remember, when you go to trick-or-treating, it doesn't matter what costume you wear. You can be a cowgirl that loves Jesus. You can be Luke Skywalker that loves Jesus. You can be a cat, pink cat, woman that loves Jesus, because you can always love others. You can always pray for those who need. You can always be nice. So we're going to pray. That's the one other way that we can show that we love Jesus. Let's join our hands. Can we join our hands, and we're going to pray. Dear God, we thank you for sending Jesus to us. Help us to let people know that we love Jesus as we love others, as Jesus loved them. And help us to pray always like Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. You guys can follow Bethany to the children's time, and let us stand and share the peace of Christ with one another.
Our scripture this morning is from the book of Luke, chapter 8, verses 26 to 39. Then they arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. And he stepped out on land. A man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherd saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into a boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. God is still speaking.
Thanks be to God.
It's been exactly 4 months since I've stood in this pulpit, and I've seen you in worship. I've been a civilian there in the back over the course of the summer and the early fall. I've seen some people at meetings. I've seen others at the 11 Step Cafe. But it's the first time I'm back in this pulpit, and I must say it feels quite familiar and also good. So it's nice to see you from this angle of vision once again, and I'm glad to be here in this role today. I also want to invite you to take an hour with us between noon and 1 as my friend Pat from the Watertown Men's Group and I will continue the conversation that begins with this text and hopefully with this sermon so that your thoughts and reflections and questions we can work with between 12 and 1 in the parlor. So if you're able to stay and would like to do that, we'd be glad to see you. As I've been preaching in other churches, I have been thanking them for making their building space available to 12-step programs. And while it seems like a natural thing for me to do the same thing here, so I'll do it. And thank you not on anybody's behalf of my own, since I learned in my first year in ministry 39 years ago not to speak on behalf of other people, because you sound like a jerk when you do that. So I'll speak on behalf of myself. Thank you. More lives are being saved in the building in Watertown than we can imagine, that we'll ever know. It's not because we're not interested, not concerned, it's not our scene. But more lives are being saved on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, than we'll ever know. More than I personally have ever done in all these years in terms of life-saving. Churches do good things, churches do nice things, churches do welcoming things, and that's all good. But the most graphic example of saving lives is what happens in our basements, and it happens every day at Watertown, and so not on their behalf, but on my own behalf, thank you. The text before us today from Luke is a reminder that, well, for me at least, that the Bible should have a warning label. It is at least R-rated. This one, since he has almost as little clothing as that Halloween costume that we're hearing about, maybe it needs to be X-rated. This does not translate well as a children's sermon. Jesus, it seems, loves children, but he is mainly talking to adults. And so this is an adult story. One of the most adult, if not the most, in the Gospels. This poor guy. Oh, boy. Maybe you're this guy. Maybe you've been this guy. Maybe you care about somebody who is this guy. I think I have met this guy more than once over the last 13 and a half years. This poor guy is in pain. He cries out. He is totally isolated. He is living not among the community where he was born, not with his family or his friends that maybe once he had. He is living among the dead in the tombs. And that's where life has led him. This is the end of what in Watertown was called Erase the Stigma Week, as we have been focusing in schools and community events and churches on erasing the stigma of drug addiction and particularly supporting those who have lost loved ones to overdoses. The story of this man, isolated, in pain, living among the dead, is a story that I've heard from time to time. When one's bottom is almost reached, maybe one's family has finally had to give up. Maybe one's circle of friends are only people who are struggling as much as you are. And sometimes the only person you can count on is your dealer, who does not really have your best interests at heart. But he's dependable. This poor guy is living among the dead, isolated there. The New English Bible translation of this text, one of the lines that Barbara read, is really quite graphic. And you'd think I made it up maybe to fit this sermon, but I didn't. The New English Bible says, with his demon in charge, he made haste to a lonely place. Which is to say, when you're already isolated, you become more isolated and more isolated. With his demon in charge, he made haste to a lonely place. Breaking through that isolation is one of the first important steps in trying to find a new life. There was a guy who said to me years ago at Watertown that he used to walk by the church all the time because he had an important appointment in Watertown Square, as he put it with a smile. He said, "I saw that your parking lot was always full. I knew what was going on in your basement, but it wasn't my time yet." He said, and then one night I went in the basement, and there was a folding chair with my name on that had been waiting all those years. How many people get that welcome anywhere? In church? In the Rotary Club? In the Communist Party of Rhode Island? Where? Who gets that kind of welcome that when they finally are able to break out of their isolation and take a chance, there's a folding chair with their name on it that's been waiting for years? This poor guy, he's totally on his own. The community has not forgotten him, because from time to time they show up to put him in chains. To protect himself from himself. It's not that they're being mean, they just don't know what else to do. So when somebody does seek him out, it's to put him in chains, but he's so self-destructive that he can break out of those chains. He's so self-destructive that when this demon leaves, 2,000 pigs die. That's how much he hates himself. Low self-esteem doesn't even come close. This self-destructive poor guy living there among the tombs, and when somebody shows up, it's basically to try to restrain him from hurting himself. Which is how we have usually thought about responding to people who are struggling with addictions. This week in West Virginia, the President of the United States said, the model for dealing with addiction now was started by the police department in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Who would have thunk it? We lived in Gloucester for 4 years. It's a tough town. It prides itself on being a tough town. It's almost like the bumper stickers used to say, Gloucester, we're a tough town. It now is the model for the rest of the United States at saying that being an addict is not a crime, and if you show up at the police station in Gloucester now, you don't get put in jail. They call on someone in the community who's a volunteer called an angel, and they take you to detox and work with you through rehab. And Gloucester, Massachusetts, where everybody's tough, is the first place in the United States to say, we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. The community shows up with this poor guy, and they put him in chains, and then he breaks out because he hates himself so bad he won't be restrained by anyone. Self-destructive is what he is. The community did what they thought was right, and it's not helping him. And we've been doing what we thought was right, but it hasn't helped anybody either. In the week of activities that we just had in Watertown, and Wednesday night there was a big event with 150 people at it, and Jerry and Sylvia had to be in two places at one time that night, but they managed to do it. So I think they're on the road to sanctification, actually. The first thing you have to be able to do is bilocate. And Jennifer Myhock and Bethany and Amanda were there. But 150 people gathered, not only to be educated, but also to support one another. And one of the guys who spoke, who's in recovery, has been part of the planning group for 3 months and is now being asked by police officers who used to arrest him for his advice and guidance and wisdom on how to move forward. He looked at me that night and he said, "Can you believe this?" Well, Jesus could have believed it, but most of us couldn't have. This poor guy, alone, isolated, in pain, well, probably didn't expect Jesus to come by. In Jesus' day, the understanding was that if you touched someone who was sick, you got sick. Jesus has a slightly different idea. He says, if I touch somebody, if my higher power is nearby, I won't get sick, they'll get better. He is always taking a chance. Always. I think we would find him quite tiresome as we were settling in and saying, we did pretty well last month, didn't we? Or last year, or last decade. He'd go, right, here's another place to take a chance. Here's another place to take a risk. We're not going to get sick. Somebody else. Jesus is not afraid to get a little dirty in order for somebody else to get clean. If I was in an African-American church, that'd be the beginning of another sermon. He's not afraid to get a little dirty in order for somebody else to get a little clean. Jesus is like a Rorschach test. Any of you who've ever taken that, I always got stymied at the one that looked like a bear dancing with a fur coat on, until the therapist said to me once, "That's what I saw too." That was unprofessional but reassuring. But Jesus is like a Rorschach test. Here's the thing, if we looked at Jesus, guess who shows up? Somebody who's quite in line with what we think is important in the world. If I looked at Jesus, guess who I see? Well, somebody who looks sort of like me, with my convictions and my values. What we need is what we see in him, and that's fine, but sometimes we miss who he actually was. And who he was, it seems to me at this point in my journey, is somebody who loves people who are sick, who does not run away from them, who in fact settles in, especially with those who are almost dead. So we can make him into something else if we want, and that's fine, but who he always comes back to being is somebody who's not afraid of people who are sick and people who are almost dead. And so Jesus goes to this man and not only takes a chance, but offers a chance. Just a little show of hands. How many people here have ever been to one of the Watertown Men's Group anniversaries in January? Just raise your hands. Okay, yeah, we've had a lot of people over the years. Years ago, Bishop Peter Weaver went and spent 5 of the 6 hours there. He's as old as I am, so he wore out at 11 p.m., couldn't last till midnight. But as we walked down in the parking lot back to where his car was, he said to me that night, 25 guys have come up to me in the course of the evening and said that you allow them to use your private office to put the money and the proceeds that they're collecting and stuff like that. 25 men came up and said, he gives us his key to his office so we can be sure that what we've collected stays safe and gets where it needs to be. You see, I could trust Joel hypothetically But that's not real. I could trust Sylvia academically. I could trust Bethany theoretically. But you can't trust people theoretically, academically, or hypothetically. You can only trust them until they let you down. And then when they let you down, you say, "You let me down." And Pat can only trust me until I let him down. And then he has to say, "You let me down." I didn't think it was a big deal to get the money out of that coffee can in the trunk of somebody's car in the parking lot as the bank. I thought that probably wasn't a great idea, and to be safer in my office. Didn't seem like the biggest idea in the world. But I guess it was an important idea. Jesus, in this story, takes a chance, but also offers this guy a chance. This poor guy, because then something good happens. He encounters God's love in Jesus of Nazareth. And he's sitting there calmly at Jesus' feet. He's fully clothed. He's in his right mind. This is all looking quite good. And the next line is, and the people were terrified. Huh. Okay, so what do you want? You were afraid of him when he was sick. Now you're afraid of him that he's well. You're afraid of him when he was living around tombs. Now you're afraid of him that he's sitting peacefully at Jesus' feet, fully clothed in his right mind. What do you exactly want? He's made some progress. But they were afraid. How long was it going to last? Is he going to be weird again tomorrow? Is he going to relapse? Is this for all time, or is this just for today? We're not trusting our eyes. We're not trusting him. We're scared. I got it. And he realizes that, and so his instinct is to just stay with Jesus now. Can I, travel along with you now? And I don't know where you're going next, but, I'm a cheap date, and I'll just sort of follow along. And Jesus says, no, actually, go back to where you're from. Tell them what God's done for you. And that's your assignment now. The 12th step of the 12 steps says that having experienced the spiritual awakening, we'll carry this message to all those who are still suffering. Jesus anticipated Bill W. by 2,000 years, but it's the same spirit. I'd rather not have you schlep along with me, but I have an idea. Why don't you go back and talk to people you know and tell them your story? The movement known as recovery functions on stories. Without stories, there wouldn't be much. Because they're honest and heartbreaking and inspiring and uplifting and painful and funny and amazing. And this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation. But in my experience, guys who have been to hell and back more than once are more able to tell their stories than sometimes we are able to tell our stories, those of us who are civilians or earthlings or normal, whatever that means. The biggest problem for every church I've ever been part of is we don't know how to tell other people what's going on here, what's valuable, or what God's done, or even if God's done anything. And so there seems to be great confusion among the mainstream churches for the last 50 years about how to say anything about what's going on that may be good, that somebody may need to hear. That's not a problem that happens in church basements where 12-step programs meet. The stories come out, tumble out, rush out like mighty waters. And Jesus is suggesting to this guy, go back where you belong. Tell your friends what God's done for you. The stories are crucial. One night years ago, there was a snowstorm in Watertown, and I was there on a night that there's only one 12-step meeting. And the guy downstairs was setting up 2 tables and 12 chairs, because it's a small meeting. And I went down and said, we'll see if we get any business tonight, because I was working on my sermon. It was the earliest start I ever got on a sermon, Friday night. And so, now I can be honest. So I was working on my sermon. I waited an hour, went down, and he was still downstairs, and he was sitting at the tables, 12 chairs, by himself. I said, "No business tonight, huh?" He goes, "No, but it's a good night." I said, "How come?" He goes, "Well, I lost everything. My family, my house, my job, my life almost. And I lied to myself and everybody I knew for 30 years. Now, once a week, I make one promise. Friday night, I'll set up 12 folding chairs and 2 tables and see what happens. If somebody shows, that was a success." But he goes, "Here's the real thing. If nobody shows, that's a success too, because I can keep a promise now." This poor guy encounters God's love in Jesus of Nazareth. It changes his life forever. The second step of the 12 steps says that I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Jesus also is a little ahead of the game on that one, but Bill W. and Dr. Bob were Christians, and they knew these stories, so I came to realize and came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. That's what happens in this story. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. Not every story is as uplifting. Not every day is as easy or as positive as this one. Not everybody makes it. But what we've been engaged in for 13 and a half years and are engaged in right up to this moment is, I think, critical and necessary and important. How many of us in our families have people we are concerned about who are addicts? How many of us have questions about our own behavior over the course of years and whether we need more help than we have yet sought? How many of us know people who have lost loved ones to the overdose epidemic, which is here now? The epidemic, which in Massachusetts has killed as many people as the 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq over the last 15 years. We've lost as many people to opioid overdoses as have died in Afghanistan and Iraq put together. The hundreds of thousands of people who are addicted to heroin, the 25 million alcoholics in our midst, 1 out of every 10 adults in the United States. Not every day is easy, not every story is uplifting, and not everybody makes it, but with that reality before us, we could do a lot worse than go back to this old story about this pained, isolated person whose demons are killing him, but who encounters God's love in Jesus of Nazareth and gets another chance. We could do a whole lot worse than let that story sink in, touch us, break our heart, heal our heart, and get us moving. We could do a lot worse, and we could scarcely do any better. And for that, I say thanks be to God. Amen. We'll sing the next song, which is "Give Me a Clean Heart." We'll sing that through twice.